Welcome to Coast Vue, the show that every single day celebrates the men and women who are making coastal Mississippi such an amazing place to live, work, and play. It is January the 2nd. I want to first say Happy New Year to you. I look back on Coast Vue. We started the show in January of 2020. It's amazing to me. So much time has passed, but what a wonderful ride it's been. Kyle and I and Cammie, the work that we've done to bring to you over 800 conversations. It's amazing to me that there's been that many conversations. But as I said so many times on the show, as a publisher of the newspaper, I never had the chance to just sit down and spend an hour with someone or even get prepared to have an hour-long conversation so I could have deep discussions with people who are making a difference in this community. And this has been a gift to me in retirement, the opportunity to do this show. And I hope it's making a difference. I get a lot of good feedback from people who pay close attention to the show, from young people, from leaders in the community. I talk, about stalwart leaders all the time, those people that you can always depend on to get things done. There's so many wonderful stalwart leaders in this community. But Coast Vue is about that. It's about celebrating coastal Mississippi in its finest through the people, entrepreneurs and leaders, and both in the private sector and the public sector, nonprofit leaders. It's a great opportunity to really see what it takes to make a community like coastal Mississippi tick. And, we've done well through the pandemic. And now as we look toward a new year, I hope and pray that everyone has a terrific new year. And I want to just say Happy New Year to you. I couldn't think of a better person to join me for this show today than Jamie Miller, the new CEO of the Gulf Coast Business Council. We had him on a few weeks ago, but I wanted to have him back since he's been in the chair for a few weeks and to reflect a bit on sort of where he is as it relates to the Business Council and, where we're going. So anyway, without any further ado, let me say good morning to you, my friend. Good morning. Thanks for having me. Good to see you. I'm assuming you're in your office now at the Business Council?
Yeah, I'm in the office now. I'm, we relocated during the pandemic to a different office within the Knight Center. And so still, shuffling a few desks around. But yeah, I show up here every day and, also get out and visit with people. But yeah, this is where I'm at.
The Knight Center. I had the honor of being chair of the Knight Foundation local committee, obviously in the weeks, the day before Katrina, but obviously after Katrina. The Knight Foundation, through our friend Alberto Ibarguen, and my dear friend, he's been on the Coast Vue many times, made over $3 million worth of investments in coastal Mississippi, one of which was a substantial investment to help form the Knight Center. We had this vision for this thing, and I had, traveled and seen some similar centers like it in other communities. But, we realized our goal, didn't we, when we brought these nonprofits together and housed them in one place so that you guys could intermingle and the opportunity for you to have synergies for the volunteer leadership to be involved. It's a great center, isn't it?
Well, it is. And coming back the second time to the Knight Center, I had worked here briefly during the Katrina recovery. And I don't think we fully appreciated what a lack of capacity we had within our nonprofits before Katrina. And then to walk in this building now and see the Gulf Coast Community Foundation and the Chamber and Goodwill and the Business Council, United Way, there are many others. And it's a beehive of activity. There's not a day I walk in when there's not some type of session, a group session going on, or people coming in and out of the building. We have, without question, benefited from the clustering or kind of centralizing these nonprofits here at the center.
Yeah, it was an interesting sort of, there were many goals of the early days of the Business Council, but when we were together and we were talking about all the things we had to do, and man, the list was long. Because when we did the Governor's Commission report, it had in there some really substantial goals around infrastructure, for example, and tourism and what we needed to do there and all these things. But there were a lot of thoughts about, how do we begin to establish strategically where we go from here? Of course, the Business Council was born out of that. This thought that, hey, look, all of us sitting at this table, we are on these foundation boards, we're on the United Way board, we're on all these different boards. And these places don't have places now what are we going to do about it? And then one thing led to another. Harris came through dramatically as they were doing some corporate reorganizations that provided the building, and then we had to go raise the money to build that building out. But it's amazing to look back now to see that it all came together. It all came together in magical ways, and the synergies of it today are contributing in ways we can't even fully appreciate today. I mean, what I mean is two different people, maybe at two different boards, and suddenly they just pass in the hallway and they're volunteer leaders and they strike up a conversation, and who knows how that has affected us in positive ways going forward. You've seen it. You see it almost every day, don't you?
Yeah, I see it. I walk in the building, I may run into Kristen Duhay or Roger Wilder from the Community Foundation or Adele Lyons with the chamber. They just want to share an idea, or maybe I've got a thought or something I've been thinking about. And it's almost like a work environment. You gather around the water cooler and you're kind of sharing ideas or things that are otherwise you wouldn't have those conversations. And so we take it for granted, but it's without question there's a benefit.
We've got a little mic problem. When we get to the next break, we'll take a look at it to see if we can correct that. But we can hear you fine, Jamie, and we'll continue to drive forward. How's it been now? You've been in when we met last. You haven't even really landed in the spot yet, and you had a very, very significant goal to go out and not assume you know anything. Just assume that you've got everything to learn. You knew a lot already, obviously, because you've been working closely with the Business Council over a bunch of years, but your goal was to listen, to go out and talk to the CEOs. Man, I am so thrilled that Carrie Wilkinson is going to be your next chairman from Ingalls. What a terrific leader she is. But again, I said this before, we said it before, that you have a dream team on your board. And when you've got leadership like Carrie, man, you almost can't fail, can you?
Well, yes. When I was having to go through talking with William Yates about who our next chairman would be, thinking about who, the possibilities, obviously Carrie was at the top of the list, but I was almost not intimidated to ask her, but she carries such a load already at the shipyard. You don't want to ask her to be a part of something that she doesn't have time to do. But I got on a phone call with her. I just asked her, I said, listen, I want you to consider being our next chairman. And without hesitation, she said yes. But and as I get to know Carrie better, the one thing that keeps standing out is she just does not everything 100%. So there's no she wants to be involved in every meeting. She wants to be involved in the conversation. She wants to, get out of my way and let me do things we need to do at the council. So I couldn't be more happy that she said yes, and it's going to be great for the. Yeah,
I think about leaders along the coast, many of whom I've talked to on the show, but you think about Jerry St. Pay and John Hairston and George Slogel, and people like some of the younger leaders that are coming on strong, like Jonathan Jones, and again, you could just name so many wonderful leaders. But what I came to appreciate about asking busy people to be involved and take leadership roles in the community was that if you want something done, find a busy person to ask, because they already understand how to compartmentalize and they already have tremendous leadership skills. They already know how to delegate. And they already know how to reach goals. And Carrie, you described her well. I mean, she's got a lot going on, but at the end of the day, she's a terrific leader. I look forward to having her on Coast Vue to tell her amazing story. But man, what a benefit it is to have someone of that stature as the new chairman of the Business Council.
Yeah, it's going to reflect positively on us in Jackson and DC, and the council already carries a lot of weight. But having that level of a leader taking that role as chairman, it just speaks volume to what the Business Council will be able to do in the future. And so I intend to, as much as she wants to get involved, we're going to get her involved. And so far, she's not said no to a meeting or phone call or anything. So
that's amazing. Well, I could say the same thing about William Yates and John Hairston and a long list of other chairmen, past chairmen. There's just a history of great chairmen for the Business Council. And the thing that makes the Business Council work, as you and I discussed before, is that What happens when you have an organization like the Business Council form, CEOs get involved initially, and then over time, it starts to get passed down to, first and second lieutenants. And you lose the focus that having CEOs involved can give you. Well, throughout the history of the Business Council, we've just not let that happen. Right. CEO participation and leadership has been the name of the game from day one. And it has to be, because this is a regional organization that's sort of saying grace over the economic engine for the state of Mississippi. And it means that on so many fronts, and we'll get into some of those here shortly, on so many fronts, the Business Council has to be successful, because there's not another regional organization in coastal Mississippi like it. It's representing the 3 coastal counties of Mississippi and, frankly, beyond. So you're speaking on issues that are important to Mississippi, for that matter. So when we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Jamie Miller, the CEO of the Gulf Coast Business Council, and we'll start to break down what some of those issues are. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to Coast Vue. We're visiting with my friend Jamie Miller. We spent an hour with Jamie a few weeks ago. He's the new CEO of the Gulf Coast Business Council. He's been on the ground now for a few weeks, and we've got a long list of things to talk about. But, Jamie, as I was mentioning earlier, as you could get around and listen to people, it's got to be great reinforcement to hear people talk about the role they believe the Business Council should play in the community.
Yes. I think generally the tone is very positive. The folks that I met with, some elected officials, some industry representatives, but there's also a real pent-up demand for wanting to know more about what our future looks like. I think part of that's just the national economy, what our future is there, and then at the state level, what's going on in Jackson. And so I think one thing that really resonated was this need for what I'm referring to as like communicating those economic metrics or data that can be pushed out to our membership to kind of give them a sense of what do sales tax collections look like this year compared to last year, or gaming revenue, or even unemployment. Inflation obviously has been a big cloud over the country, and where are we headed in that regard. I think they want to be not reassured, at least with some data and some transparency about what's happening at the national level, the state level, and then what does that mean for the Gulf Coast? How do we respond to that? What is the right reaction to those things that are happening sometimes out of our control?
Yeah, I think what's interesting about that, and the Business Council has at times actually done a good job with that data collecting, and it's not easy to do. There's a lot to grab there. But I think creating sort of a scorecard, not necessarily a scorecard for the Business Council, right, but a scorecard for our region that really details how are we doing as it relates to, like, for example, average pay. How are we doing as it relates to unemployment? Where are the challenges and where are the opportunities as it relates to the jobs that are available in coastal Mississippi? How are our biggest industries doing? If you think about, of course, Ingalls on one side, and now you've got Kerry Wilkinson as the chairman of the Business Council, who's president of Ingalls, and then you've got Stennis and all those partners and blue chip industries that are part of Stennis. And how is hospitality doing? How's the gaming industry doing? What are the challenges that they're going to be facing going forward, not only from an economic point of view, but from a competitive point of view? How do we stay aligned in the state around making sure that regulations are manageable and that taxes don't go out of whack for casinos and so on, that keeps this market competitive? But there's a lot to measure. There's a lot to think about, isn't there?
There is. And, what I hope to do, you mentioned a scorecard, which I think is maybe a good way to think about it, is some routine frequency of just some maybe 5 or so metrics that people are generally curious about. Now, within an industry, the gaming industry is paying close attention to the things that make their business work. Same thing with bankers and financial institutions. But I think there's another group of CEOs that are, in housing and insurance and other industries that want to know kind of month to month, quarter to quarter, even week to week, kind of how are we stacking up against the Pensacola's or Baton Rouge or Memphis or other places around us. I mean, it's just one element. It's not everything we need to be communicating, but I think it's one element that I'd like to reinstitute to kind of give people a sense of how we're doing. there's other things as it relates to Jackson, what's going on in Jackson, what's important statewide that may be potentially impacting the Gulf Coast. I think we're going to do a good job this year of trying to stay on top of that and paying attention and be present in Jackson.
Yeah, you mentioned Jackson. There's so many different roles a business council can play. Certainly communicating with the business community, keeping the business community aligned and together so that you can listen and think about the future. There's a strategic role to say, okay, look, economic development is changing in the years ahead. There's a new economy. How do we best take advantage of that new economy? How do we align the legislative agenda, our legislative agenda, with the legislature's agenda in a way that helps coastal Mississippi shine and have success? Because when I say economic engine for the state, we're not down here in a vacuum creating economic activity for ourselves. The economic activity we're creating help Mississippi succeed. It's important for us to be able to align our goals, our successes, and make sure that the legislature, all of them, whether they're from North Mississippi or coastal Mississippi, understand that our success is their success. Mm-hmm. That's something you just, because you came from the Mississippi Development Authority, you've had different roles in your career, but man, you can't communicate too much, can you?
No, you can't. There's other regions of the state that are also, trying to get their voice heard on certain needs when it comes to state resources and finances. But look, everybody that I encountered in Jackson had a very favorable view of the coast, generally speaking. They recognize the economic power of the coast, tourism, gaming, military, shipbuilding, Stennis. I mean, it's just a whole host of things that we offer. But when it comes to the finite resources that they have, you've got to make the business case, continue to make the business case for why investments on the coast make sense. There are other parts of the state that clearly have needs, and we want to help those areas grow as well. But you're right. If you're not present, if you're not communicating, you could get lost quickly in the crowd.
You could. I think about the Golden Triangle. We've had representatives from the Economic Development Organization there on, and there are a lot of you think of the coast. If you only get focused on the coast, you can forget that other regions of the state are doing extraordinarily well, and they have their needs too, and they are also economic engines. And it just means we've got to really have our act together. Essentially, that's what it means, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it does, and it's not. It goes past politics to me. It's the data. It's the business case. Politics always play a role in some level for sure. But at the end of the day, you want to have a message that's aligned with information that's accurate, that has a persuasive and return on investment. So that, you build credibility that way, frankly. I mean, if you go over there and ask for things that, don't pan out the way you sold them, then, you can quickly lose credibility. So I think it's also important never to go ask for something that's unnecessary or not in your best interest, because they don't forget that either.
So as you think about the upcoming legislative session, it really helped you to have spent some time at the MDA. I mean, that gave you some terrific insights, didn't it?
It did. And I did government affairs and legislative affairs work at MDA, so I was in the Capitol a lot. There's a handful of chairmen on committees that can make a huge difference in your success, and obviously the leadership at Lieutenant Governor and the Speaker and our Governor. But all those folks want to make good decisions, and they need information and data to do that. So I think it certainly enlightened me into the sense that you can set up the meetings, but you got to have your elevator's pitch or your one pager that kind of lays out the issue quickly, and then let them ask questions. I mean, they're smart people for the most part. They're going to ask questions, and you got to be able to be prepared to give that information to them.
Yeah, I wrote a year or so ago that I wish the big three, the Speaker, the Lieutenant Governor, the Governor, would communicate more and work closer together. Yeah, there's been signs more recently that they're doing that, but whether they do it the way that I want them to do it or not, the reality is they're all three very focused on economic development, and they're very focused on helping the economic engines of our state stay healthy. I mean, there's no question about that. And the other point is they're smart as hell. They understand the numbers. They'll outwork all of us. They really will burn the midnight oil to do what's best for this state. And when you've got a setup like that, it bodes well for us, really, at the end of the day, as long as we make our arguments soundly and, as you said, data based. We have a good opportunity to succeed, even with competition from other regions.
Yeah. No, the approach to me is to go in with sound, good information, but have an awareness of politics. The other thing you get caught up in Jackson and in other places is the context by which you're asking something. Timing is everything. 1 week to the next, asking for something in Jackson can look a lot different. So I think that goes to the presence of being in Jackson and kind of constantly communicating with folks that are in the Capitol. But it's they call it sausage making for a reason. It's part science, part art. But I think our goal is to communicate a plan to our coastal delegation and then share that constantly, share that same message.
Well, we've got a lot to talk about. Yeah, we're going to talk about Stennis Space Center, the cyber initiative, the FEMA flood map. We may not get to everything, and we'll just pick it up on the other side in our future conversations. There's a lot to focus on. We'll see you after this break. Welcome back to Coast Vue. I'm pleased to have my friend Jamie Miller, who's the CEO of the Coast Business Council. And, I was privileged to be at that table when we formed the Gulf Coast Business Council. And, there was such a clarion call for a regional organization, especially in the wake of Katrina. But you don't have to have a Katrina to understand that there's a lot to say grace over in building a strong community. And if you don't have a regional organization composed of the top CEOs of the region, focused on making sure that we're thinking about what's best for this region going forward, then you're going to miss some opportunities. And as I've said so many other times, whether it's regions of the state or regions of the South or regions of the nation, they are all focused, very focused to do a good job. One that I've mentioned, Jamie, is when I was in Alabama, and you worked with us for a short period of time during the oil recovery efforts when I was over there. But I was always a little bit. Well, no, I was extremely impressed. I had responsibility for the Huntsville newspaper in Huntsville, Alabama. Huntsville is as much sort of a suburb of Tennessee than it was part of Alabama. But man, when you think about the work that they were doing in Huntsville, high-tech work that they're doing in Huntsville, and the way when they said that let's say the group of 100 are going to go to Washington, D.C. for what's best for Huntsville, 100 people went. I mean, they were so freaking aligned. And that's our competition. That's these folks that have their act together regionally and know what their goals are, and they pursue those goals with dogged determination. That's what our business council has to do, isn't it, Jamie?
That's right. You're exactly right. I mean, the power and the persuasion, I guess, that we hold is that, these CEOs of these industries that are vested in coastal Mississippi, they have over 50,000 employees. They have a great say in how we move forward. And so it's important for them to be at the table in one voice when we have to go to Jackson or D.C. There's no question there. When we show up in those numbers, they listen.
I can't help when I think about Stennis Space Center and the history of Stennis Space Center and the role that Leo Seal and so many other of our most important leaders played in that. The wisdom of creating that buffer zone that became sort of this competitive advantage for Stennis, way beyond the testing facility, which is obviously incredibly important, but this collection of both governmental and industry partners that we have there, literally blue chip industries that are at Stennis. What do you, when you think about the future of Stennis, what do you think about?
The future of space flight is changing and has changed with the onset of commercial space flight like SpaceX, Blue Origin, many others that you see. And I think NASA's pivoting in that direction as well. The Artemis launch that just occurred at Kennedy, those rockets were tested at Stennis. There'll be another round of testing. But the horizon is changing. And I think that same initiative and same focus that it took, 40 or 50 years ago to get Stennis and the buffer zone created, we've got to realign and shape what the next 50 years looks like. And so to me, that's been, I've been meeting with Partners for Stennis. I've been meeting, while I was at MDA, we met with the Office of Military Affairs, the leadership at NASA. I think everybody realizes that the future of Stennis could be bright. It should be bright. But we're going to have to reimagine what the next 50 years looks like in a sense, because it's a federal city. You've got a lot of Department of Defense folks there with the Navy. You've got a handful of different agencies that we don't want to lose. In fact, we want to grow that mission and we want to grow the activity out there. But and I'm happy to say that, working with the Office of Military Affairs, we're proposing some legislation this year that would actually create the Office of Space and Technology, which we think would be a precursor to some more focused alignment with what happens statewide as it relates to commercial spaceflight, but certainly at Stennis.
Well, when I had the opportunity to do the keynote address for the One Coast Awards this year, I quoted Jerry St. Pave. Most people know Jerry, but former CEO of Ingalls and just a consummate community leader. That one of our biggest challenges in coastal Mississippi is to fight complacency, and that is this thought that Chevron and Ingalls and these blue chip industries you were just talking about that are part of sort of that federal mission at Stennis are always going to be there, and we cannot assume that. I mean, we can never assume that, and we have to be incredibly proactive. The other thing is that we have to fight the gravity toward mediocrity. People like the status quo. That's just the reality of the world. People, they get comfortable in the status quo, but we have to be brave. We have to set higher goals. We have to be aware of how things are going to be changing in 3, 5, 10 years from now, especially as it relates to space flight, which you just pointed out. But shipbuilding, same kind of thing. I mean, we've got one of the best shipbuilding facilities in the world. How do we make sure it stays that? How do we make sure that it continues to contribute in the way that it's contributing today? And what can it do even more so in the future? Chevron is one of the most important refineries in the United States. Mm-hmm. One of the most important. How do we make sure that it stays there? How do we contribute to that? But, fighting complacency, staying focused on the future, helping people know that we're not infallible. I mean, there are all kinds of challenges that could eat away at us. And before we know it, we've lost some of our luster and we're moving in the wrong direction. That's why you have to think strategically, isn't it, Jamie?
It is. I mean, it's important to remember even the agencies, NASA, Department of Defense, Navy, their missions are changing. The world is evolving, and they've got to be prepared for that changing world. And so if we're not moving with them, if we're not listening to them, if we're not giving them the resources and the capability to continue to do what they do, then that's on us. And so part of this is listening to NASA and the Stennis leadership. It's listening to Partners for Stennis, Hancock Port and Harbor, who all kind of have benefited from that area. And then, as you said, not being complacent. Let's go build what the next 20, 50 years looks like. But let's not wait and be reactive to what could happen. Let's be proactive.
I got another great example. I had the opportunity to spend some time with Mary Graham, president of Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College recently, one of the top community college systems, certainly Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College, one of the top in the entire nation. And they are that because of what you and I are talking about now. They're very focused on listening to the industrial partners to make sure they have the kind of programs they need. Over 50% of their programs today are non-traditional education. The evolution is fast when you listen. A great example of that, actually, is the Mississippi Cyber Initiative and the partnership that around that and the role that Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College is playing there. But, I mean, that's a great example, and there are many more like it if we just uncover them.
Yeah, the Mississippi Cyber Initiative is something that kind of came to being a few years ago. The Gulf Coast Community College and Mississippi State and USM all immediately saw the need and kind of rallied around this effort. We hope to now, I mean, the goal is to construct a cyber center
on base at Keesler Air Force Base, where Keesler trains airmen in cybersecurity. There's nothing in our world that's not impacted by cybersecurity. It is nationally, locally, state, at every level, at your home computer. So that's thinking forward and trying to train a workforce and attracting industry and a workforce with something that will be with us for the foreseeable future. And it's happening right now. I mean, it's as you said, Mary Graham and her staff at the community college have embraced it. We're going to take another step, hopefully, here in the next year or two, and it'll be another something that we'll look back, hopefully, in 10 years from now, 5 years from now, and say, this didn't have to happen, but because of some proactive people and some focused attention, we now have the kind of a center of excellence for cybersecurity.
Well, as you know, one of the major recommendations when I was in Alabama leading the oil recovery planning efforts there was to form a regional organization in Alabama, which was ultimately formed. I was honored to serve as its first chairman. But part of the evolution of that organization was to create a PAC. And I have been really, really aggressive in saying that the Business Council needs to do the same thing. They need a PAC, a political action committee separate from the Business Council that can help us find the best candidates and help support the best candidates for coastal Mississippi. Is there any action happening in that area?
Yes, actually, when I came on board, the decision at the executive committee had been made that the Business Council would form a PAC. And so, but I was able to shepherd that process through. And as recently as, a few weeks ago, we filed our paperwork with the Secretary of State. So there, at least on paper, there is a Gulf Coast Business Council political action committee. Now we have to go do the work of organizing around the board and raising money and, thinking about how we want to evaluate candidates, what races we want to get involved with. But this PAC is focused at a state level and a county level. And so races that would occur, statewide or locally or at a county level, we would participate in potentially if we choose to.
I'm thrilled to hear it. Because this is it's a really powerful extension of this regional effort. And you've got people in the know, extraordinarily smart people who can help sort of, clear candidates, so to speak, make sure the candidates understand what the needs of this community are and that we're supporting the best candidates who see their mission, who understand their mission. I'm excited about that. Hey, when we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Jamie Miller from the Gulf Coast Business Council. Welcome back to Coast Vue, the final segment on this new year. A great show to have with Jamie Miller from the Gulf Coast Business Council, talking about how we're getting our act together as a region to be able to take advantage of opportunities as we go forward. And, Jamie, I know that it's a lot like drinking from a fire hose. But, again, your work after Katrina, again, I got to see you in action over in Alabama. Your work, with Marine Resources, your work at MDA. You're ready for this job. And so while you may still feel like you're drinking from a fire hose, you have laid a wonderful foundation that helps put everything in perspective, haven't you?
Yes, I feel really good about, identifying what needs to occur and kind of the order. I think probably where my learning curve is coming back in is just coming from a large agency with a lot of staffing to a smaller agency with just one or two or three of us. I have to manage kind of the expectations of timelines and how quickly and prioritize. There's probably a list of 20 things that I want to see done. Probably need to take the first 5 or so of those most important things and tackle first. So I think that's been my adjustment is the excitement and identifying where the opportunities are, but at the same time, managing expectations about, how quickly we can move in some regards. Because what I don't want to do is do something quickly and do it poorly. I want to make sure we make time to do what we're going to do well, so that it's received well and it's of quality. So that's probably where I'm struggling the most, is trying to not go too fast and lose some of the quality of the efforts and initiatives that we're trying to take on.
And there may be some innovative ways for you to do that. I mean, one of the things we did after Katrina is we worked hard to tap into really capable leaders who could lead task force for us, and then they would draw upon their resources and the resources of the people on the committee to achieve that goal. But even under those circumstances, as you well know, it still has to be shepherded by someone on your team. Yeah. And there are so many. You could put 20 task force together right now, focus on various agendas, but somebody's still got to stay grace on keeping it organized and bringing it together. So I know it's a tough job, but you guys will do a good job, I think, at prioritizing what you need to do. The other thing that I said at that One Coast Award speech when I had the opportunity to do that is that leadership development is so critical. The master's program has played just an amazingly important role in helping people understand sort of the power and opportunities and challenges of our region, hasn't it?
Yes. And as I've learned more about how effective and kind of what an impact this program has had, even the last few weeks, I've had a few people call me and said, hey, when can I submit my master's program application? We took a quick break during the pandemic, but I've had one opportunity to meet with a current master's class, and it's like getting your battery recharged. I mean, you sit with these what I refer to as younger leaders that are so energetic and bought in to trying to develop proposals and a path forward, because they see their future. It's part of where they see them and their families, their companies. And they get a chance to kind of get outside of the coast, go to some other areas that have had success, kind of compare, bring back some ideas that maybe had not been thought about, and then, face some of the realities and challenges of trying to implement something here on the Gulf Coast. But I can tell you, just if you want to go back and look at some really great papers and ideas that have been developed through the master's program, on our website, we've archived all those previous presentations and programs, and they've tackled some of the most challenging issues and come up with practical solutions. Now, do all of them get implemented? Not immediately, but it becomes a resource in an archive, almost like a think tank of sorts, where people that are serious about those types of issues, a lot of the research and homework's been done.
It's incredible. It really is. And you look at the list, and I often say when I look at the list of master's program participants, that person hasn't gone through it yet. Because there's some really, really, really capable leaders that are going through the program. Some CEOs, just as you pointed out, some really smart young people that are coming along, but the opportunity to put all them in that room and let them sort of collectively challenge one another and smartly think about the challenges that we have as a community and sort of I think the other thing is to put their regional glasses on to see how the dots connect and why it's important for us to certainly appreciate the diversity of our region. That's clearly one of the things that make this such a special place. But, when it all comes together in this place we call Coastal Mississippi, and, having leaders understand the big picture of it all, man, that's like really important.
It is. And it's another thing that I think continues to serve the coast. I mean, the alumni, we're thinking right now about getting the alumni of these previous master's programs together and kind of bringing them back together. I mean, it's something that stays with them. It stays as their career grows, as they continue to get involved in different capacities. That mindset, that different approach to solving problems never goes away, and it benefits all of us.
Well, Jamie, when we come back in a couple of weeks and chat, we'll talk about the FEMA flood map revision efforts that are underway. A lot of challenges there, some GCRF investments, the Gulf Coast Restoration Fund, which is incredibly important to us. And there are several other things that we need to still talk about. But we're out of town today. Happy New Year to you, man. Congratulations on hitting the ground running.
Yeah, Happy New Year. Thank you.
You bet. We'll see you tomorrow.
All right.